Just catch up. I like to force the guest to listen to the intros so then they understand what the show is, because most of my guests don't listen to the show. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. You're listening to The Tom Kelly Show, the home of self-improvement and fun. My name is Tom Kelly. I'm fixing up my life so you don't have to. Is your life where you want it to be? Well, mine isn't either. I'm a stand-up comedian who has been on The View, Good Morning America, Headline News, America's Got Talent, and a couple of other shows as well. And this is the podcast where we take the existential crisis and turn it into a renaissance. New episodes guaranteed on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Available at TomKellyShow.com. I'm across the board on social media as Tom Kelly Show. But right now, I'm forcing my guests to listen to my long intro. Why don't we just start the show?
The Tom Kelly Show.
Now, Dean, every time I have a guest on, the best part is watching the guest's face on the theme song. Our guest today is one of my oldest friends in comedy, and I say that a lot, but that's because I've been booking a lot of them lately. Dean Obeidallah. He's a name that I know some of you guys know without knowing me. He is a Sirius radio show host. He is an advocate for the Muslim and Palestinian community. He's the founder of the Big Brown Comedy Show Tour. We were NBC Pages together. He was a mentor in my earliest days of stand-up comedy. And he is here by the request of my friend Josh Payne, who was also an NBC Page with us. And Josh has been great about joining in the existential crisis that has been the last few episodes of the show. And Josh said, Dean would be great. You should ask Dean. I'm like, well, I kind of asked him a few months ago. And she's like, why don't you really ask him now? So I feel like it's destiny that you're on now. And Dean, we could do a week on Dean. He hosts a 3-hour show every day that covers the wide range of politics. But what Dean probably doesn't talk about every day is the sacrifices he has made for his career. When I first met Dean, he was 27. I was about 23, and it's amazing how that felt like a huge age difference at the time. Dean had just given up being a lawyer to be a NBC friggin' tour guide and also a stand-up comic. You were married back then, right? I'm trying to...
My marriage ended because of all of that.
So let's start with that. What kind of lawyer were you? I forget that. What kind of lawyer were you?
Mediocre. Okay, folks.
Yeah, but I'm bump.
That's it. Litigation. I represented mid-size and bigger corporations, insurance companies. So it was really defending companies against people. So there was no fun in it. I mean, it was a paycheck, right, but you didn't feel like you were doing anything good for society. That's the kind of, so as a litigator, I did it for like 4 or 5 years, didn't enjoy it. And because of Russ Maneve, and you know Russ.
I do know Russ. He's someone we should have on. And he was another lawyer who gave up comedy, right? Or gave up lawyering.
He was an accountant who gave up being an accountant. And we were friends in North Jersey, so we would write together sometimes. And then he joined the Page program and then was hired at NBC. And he told me about the Page program. I'm like, this sounds great. So he helped me get the interview. And that when I got hired, it was a big choice. I was making probably $60,000 or $70,000 a year. And I remember being interviewed and you had to put your salary down. I was probably making more than the person interviewing me. They're like, you want to do this? It pays $10 an hour. I'm like, I've got to do this. It's not like I want to. I've got to. Like, I knew it was a calling. I knew I had to leave the law and go into something that I could enjoy, at least have some fun. And
actually, that's a crazy question. Was it a calling? Did it feel like almost a religious sort of a voice in your head?
To do comedy, like I don't know why I wanted to do stand-up comedy and would be I was a lawyer and I would leave, my law office early or sneak out or work late at night after doing comedy. There's no reason why. So it really was about the idea of, it was some kind of calling. And I was also active in politics. So I am doing a lot of public speaking, doing political stuff. And for some reason, like this marriage of the two, that I'm like, I can do comedy and talk about things that I'm passionate about, but make people laugh, which I really enjoyed making people laugh. That's why I wanted to do comedy. I felt a satisfaction when people laughed at jokes. I don't know why. It was a needy thing. I guess the attention you don't get from your parents, because they were working in my parents' diner 24/7.
I didn't realize your dad owned a diner.
Yeah, in Jersey.
Okay, I did. And your dad, I mean, when you talk about this, Dean and I used to bond. We both have Sicilian mothers, American-born Sicilian mothers.
Yeah.
And Dean also has a dad who was from, I guess, was it officially Palestine, or I know the border moves back and forth.
Jordan. He was born in what was called Palestine because he was born in the 1920s. And then it's now known as the West Bank where he's born. And he had moved to Jordan in the early 50s and came to the US in the mid 50s, and then met my Sicilian mom in New Jersey, where all marriages are made in heaven. You know,
yeah.
At a party. So there's this Palestinian Muslim immigrant meeting this Italian Catholic, Sicilian Catholic woman who was the daughter of immigrants. But that's the American story. It was the American dream come true in North Jersey, and hence me, half Palestinian, half Sicilian.
Well, now, and your dad died shortly before I met you.
I was in the Page. I was in the Page program when he died in 1998. I was working at SNL as the desk page, but I was still in the Page program formally at the time.
And what did you know? And I say this descended from immigrants. Here you are. You're the American dream. You're a damn lawyer, and you're giving it all up to wear a polyester suit, be a tour guide, and tell fart jokes in the back of a hamburger joint. What did he say?
You know, because I was a lawyer, he said, okay, I understand. And my mom too was like, well, you have your law degree. You can always go back. So they figured it was a phase, that kind of thing. So it was a little easier. It wasn't like I quit law school like 2 years in or something. I got the law degree. I passed the bar in New York and New Jersey. I was practicing law. I could go back. I'm not going to go back now. But then theoretically, even I thought, hey, give this a few years. Doesn't work. I'll just be a lawyer again. There's plenty of law jobs. That wasn't a big deal. And I was a pretty good lawyer. I mean, I wasn't great, but I was pretty good. So I could get a job. It wasn't that problem. So it gave me that kind of security. But at the time I was married, and for my ex-wife, we got divorced a short time after being in the Page program. And that was really the last straw for her, because she said, I'll give it a year of you doing this Page thing. And I'm like, I just got hired at Saturday Night Live. I'm gonna be a receptionist making $40 a week.
Honey, I'm going from tour guide to receptionist. I'm moving up.
Right. And the best thing is, Tom, we went to marriage counseling, and the marriage counselor, when we would come in, would just talk about SNL because he just watched it. And I was working at SNL, and he would want to talk about the episodes of SNL. And it was just, I'm like, this is funny here, but this is clearly not going to resolve our problems in our relationship. So the best thing is that we got divorced. I mean, we didn't have children. It's not, if it wasn't a piece of paper to get married, we just would have been a couple that broke up that were dating, but you had to go through the whole court system thing to get a divorce. But look, if you're not going to go after your dreams, especially when you're younger, you're not going to believe in yourself. How can you expect anyone else to believe in you? You've got to go after your dreams. I'm such an adamant supporter of people who go after their dreams that you got one shot, folks. You know, me and Tom can tell you, life goes like a snap of a finger.
Well, it's funny that I'm going through a few different stages here, where there's part of me that says you should chase your dreams. And then there's just times where I want to go up to people and say, you should not chase your dreams. Your dreams are nightmares waiting to happen.
What's their dream, though? It depends on their dream, Tom.
Well, listen, you're right. In your case, you were smart. You always had lawyering to fall back on.
Right. True.
I know a guy who gave up being a mailman after, let's say, 12 to 15 years on his road to a federal pension and decided to chase comedy. And God bless him, he's awful. You know, you just
he's not a good comic.
Not a good comic. The person now books shows in Jersey, and there's been a lot of federal aid for the guy because now he can't pay his medical bills. I mean, honestly, a lot of our tax dollars are keeping a booker in New Jersey afloat. And we could argue about healthcare another time, but
is he happy?
He's so friggin'. I don't know.
That's the question.
Yeah.
If you look at from the outside and you say, how could you be happy? But on the inside, if you're happier, you've made the right choice. And if you haven't, you know what? It doesn't mean because you quit one career for another, that career might not work out. Go do something else. You can leave that career.
Well, I guess that's the part that I loved about you is you were fluid, man. And a few moments that I don't know if Dean will remember where he provided friendship to me. I remember there was at one point I was assigned to have the NBC Page job that was essentially the bouncer at the after parties. And I did it only for 6 weeks because somebody else wound up hooking up with somebody at the party, though to her credit, she married the guy, Maura Wall. Do you remember that one? Yeah, Maura got fired essentially for flirting with a publicist at the party. She and another woman got, reassigned from that assignment. And I always loved it that the SNL people fired her, but she wound up marrying the guy she met that night. So who's wrong?
She won.
She won. But I remember you and me having a drink with Josh Payne at one of those parties. And we called me the heir apparent to the NBC Page desk. And then I didn't get it. And then my perfect Page career was full of disappointments that turned out to be blessings without getting crazy. For you, every time if you had to go fetch Tracy Morgan a latte, there had to be a moment in your head saying, good God, I went to law school. Pick your worst day.
It was never at SNL because, first of all, there were interns who would do that stuff, like get coffee. Because I could even say to an intern who worked on the show, go get, but you were doing things that were, if you look at it objectively, it's beneath what a lawyer would do, right? But to me, it didn't matter. I was at Saturday Night Live. I loved Saturday Night Live as a child. It was a dream to be there. There were a few times I actually stopped myself in the halls and go, you got to appreciate this. You're at Saturday Night Live. The only time I found it demeaning, and it was they made me, you do other rotations, and it wasn't SNL. It was in the corporate world. And for a week, I had to push around like newspaper clips and hand them out around the building. And it wasn't, I didn't have any problem with it, but the look from people are like, you're beneath me. Because you weren't even in a Page jacket. Like, you're some person pushing a cart around in the morning, handing out news clips. And that was the only time I had this self-awareness. I'm like, wow, this is kind of, but SNL, it's cool. And then when you didn't know what you did, SNL, you work at SNL, they're like, what?
Because I also know Dean from another awkward or humble beginning, Hamburger Harris.
Yeah, Gladys.
Now, Gladys is, and you and I are both still friends with Gladys. She sometimes listens to the podcast and likes to tell me how boring it is.
Wow.
God bless. She's still a mom. But we started Dean. Actually, I may have been one of the first people to tell me to go to Gladys's open mic at Hamburger Harry's. Was the place to be in the 90s and early 2000s if you were starting in comedy. And one of the things you would do.
By the way, to tell me, who else started there? Jim Gaffigan was there all the time. Zach Galifianakis was there all the time.
Yep.
Slovin and Allen, who people don't know, but they went on to write for SNL and do some other stuff. There were some other people who would come around. Everybody was there all the time.
Yeah, like Amy Schumer at least did a few nights. It was
Aziz Ansari was there. I used to talk to Aziz all the time there, and Aziz was there. So it really was, because it was like a nice setting. It was pretty nice. It was painless, and for open mics in New York, which are just punitive, it was kind of nice. It was the
best open mic in New York City. Now, round 2 of that was handing out flyers in Times Square to get people into the room. Did you go to level 2? Did you flyer at all? Did you bark?
Not for Gladys, because she had me emceeing. So if you emceed at the time, you didn't have to do that.
Okay.
And so but for Adam Hunter, when Adam Hunter was producing shows there, Adam would say, could you do it? And I was the worst at it. And he didn't care. He was just go do a half hour because everyone else is doing it. But we were friends enough where he didn't care.
Yeah.
Like him, Dave Rubin, who's now horrible, who's on the right.
I would love to see you and Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin has been invited on this podcast many times, no answer. Or what'll happen with Dave Rubin is Dave Rubin, look him up, guys. I actually enjoy him to a certain degree. My politics are right in the middle of Dean and Dave Rubin, so I can float around politically. Dave Rubin is a very conservative gay man who was a comic in these same days, and he has a huge following on the internet, just like Dean. And
he's bigger. He's much bigger. He's like a million Twitter. He's got like a million Twitter followers. Like he's got a bigger following because on the right there's a much more. They gravitate towards people on like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin. I'm not joking when I say if Dave Rubin was on the left or Shapiro, they'd be mid-level progressive pundits because there's such a well of really smart people on the right. And I'm not being demeaning. Just saying they're like geniuses on the right. I know that sounds elitist, but I'm just being blunt.
Okay. I mean, listen, without knocking Dave Rubin right now, let's talk about that, though. Now, here you are. You're doing comedy. When I knew you, we were both doing, hi, we're from New York and New Jersey, and our moms are this, and this. 9/11 happens.
Right.
How does that change your life?
I'm just Italian. That's it. I'm not even mentioning I'm Palestinian. In the beginning, I didn't talk about being of Arab heritage after 9/11 for a while. In fact, by 9/11, I was doing regular spots in various clubs already, like Stand Up New York and Broadway. But I recall going up at Stand Up New York and going up as Dean Joseph, not as Dean Obeidallah, because the club manager, the booker at the time, is like, if you say your last name, someone's going to go, what kind of name is that? And you're going to say Arab, and we're in New York, and people were getting beaten up for being Arab, or people thought they were Arab and beat them up like Sikhs and stuff. Sikhs, they literally killed a Sikh man in Arizona. It made sense. So for a little while, I went as Dean Joseph, which is my middle name, but then I went to Dean Obeidallah, but I didn't talk about being of Arab heritage again for 3 or 4 months after 9/11. It took that much time where it was very raw. I mean, I was here living in New York. I saw the building burn. I saw the building collapse standing on 8th Street and 6th Avenue. So I understood it, but it took me time to process it and then come out little by little with humor about me, not about 9/11, but about what's it like to be Arab now? All of a sudden people saying things about your last name they never said before. Politicians demonizing all Arabs and all Muslims. And you're like, wow, I used to hear whispers of this, but now it's just out in the open. And it was just a different world.
Religiously, where were you? Religiously, you were raised Catholic?
I was raised Catholic, but my dad's Muslim. So he would talk to us about, they learned the Muslim prayers.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have pork in the house. Not too much alcohol growing up. I never had a drink of alcohol until I got to college, to show you, because there was no alcohol in the house. And it was sort of frowned upon, but that was sort of the world we lived in. That was both faiths, but I was confirmed as a Catholic as a kid. There was no Muslims around at all. It was my dad. I grew up in Lodi first, right? There were 2 ethnic groups. You were Italian or my father. That was it. And then, as time went on, it was more of a community. And then after he passed on, I started gravitating more to Islam, probably to honor him.
Now, you are light-skinned. You could have changed your last name. You didn't have to go on big brown comedy tours. You didn't have to start pulling together the Muslim comedy scene where, let's face it, when we started in comedy, it was whiter than we are. Being Italian was ethnic in our circle. Not that there weren't black comedians, ethnic comedians, but there was white guys did this. These guys did that. We're here. These guys were here. You didn't have to do it. And you surely didn't have to start organizing the big brown comedy tour. Did you feel that was a risk?
No, I felt like that was a sense of activism. I mean, the first thing I started in 2003 with my buddy, Maysoon Zayed, is the New York Arab American Comedy Festival. And it's still going on. We just did our 18th year this in the fall. We're doing our 19th one this fall at Gotham Comedy Club again. And it's 3 nights and 5 shows. And in the first few years, we couldn't find enough Arab American comedians to fill the shows. Now we have to turn them away. And guys like Rami Youssef, who's got a show, Rami, and many other comics or known were in it, just up and coming, and they just were coming to our festival. They were doing their own thing. So to me, it was a sense of activism. It was an idea of using my skill set to try to tell a different story about Arab Americans than what was being portrayed in the media, which were generally we were terrorists or we were potential terrorists. That was, I used to do a joke. There are 2 types of news stories about Arabs in the media. We're either described as terrorists, gunmen, or fighters, or alleged terrorists or gunmen. Those were type of the stories about us. And so we tried to use comedy as an activist tool, as a platform to talk about who we were. Then I was on the Comedy Central Axis of Evil special in 2008, which was the first time there was ever a special on American TV with Middle Eastern American comedians, me and 3 others, Masha Brani, Ahmed, and Aaron Cater. Then we toured the Middle East. We did shows in the Middle East. I did shows in the Middle East where me and Aaron went and toured. We had like 2,000 people come to see us. Like, it was just insane going to the Middle East and being like, and then I produced a comedy festival in Jordan for 3 years for the king and for the mayor, for King Abdullah. And that was a lot of fun. So my career has gone on a journey that's really been fun. And I look back, it's probably the years like 2008, 9, 10, 11, going to the Middle East, touring in the States, doing theaters, that were probably just the most fun at the time. Now I feel like I'm a more, my show is more serious, but we have a sense of humor on it. But things change. As you get older, certain things appeal to you more. So it became more, instead of comedically talking about the issues, now I talk about them more head on, because I think the stakes are higher. But I still do some comedy, still do the Big Brown Comedy Show we're doing in New York on February 20th, Sunday. That's President's Day weekend at the comic strip in New York. It's a great show, a lot of fun, a lot of really good fun comedians. And it's not expensive or anything. It's a fun show to bring people together.
Now, politics. Your career is heavy into politics right now, and I don't want to get into the specifics of them. My question for you is, how do you, whether you're right, wrong, indifferent, I'm not even talking cancel culture, how do you deal with people projecting very strong and differing opinions on you, even when you don't want it? This, like your nature of comedy, your radio show has to be exhausting.
It's not that, it's more social media, Twitter, email, people from the right will just say things that they're like, you're saying this. I'm like, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm a wordsmith. I mean, I write for CNN Weekly. I also write now for MSNBC. It's odd. I think I'm the only person getting paid by both to write once a week, write for Daily Beast and Salon. You know, I'm a lawyer. I look at words carefully. I pick my words carefully. If I make mistakes, I'm the first to apologize. I'm like, look, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. Because I'm never going to demonize any minority group, because I've been through the Muslim community, the Arab community. We've been through so much hate. I mean, we had a guy run for president, Donald Trump, call for a total complete shutdown on Muslims. We saw a massive spike in hate crimes because those words mean something. So I will never, I'm an ally with every minority community. And if someone is wrongfully demonized, regardless of if they're white, black, brown, whatever, I will stand with them if it's wrong. But you have to have a thick skin. You got to block people on Twitter. If they're your friends, you try to reach out and go, what is going on? You know, and sometimes you're going to step on a minefield there where someone on the right, in my case, because I'm targeted by them a lot, they'll say, I'm making light of this or not. I'm not. And I had, you know, Tom, in 2017, I had neo-Nazis at the Daily Stormer, a right-wing, not the most popular Nazi publication.
You're getting death threats, right?
Well, they fabricated tweets in my name. Now, they couldn't post them, but they fabricated them saying I was involved in terrorism. And they wrote an article in their Daily Stormer about it and said, go confront Dean. And I got death threats. And the reason they did that is I wrote an article condemning Donald Trump and Donald Trump's refusal to denounce white supremacy. And this was 3 months before Charlottesville. It was already bubbling up. There were incidents and he would not denounce it. And so I sued them in federal court for defamation, emotional distress. And I won $4.1 million on paper because, Tom, Nazis are good at bigotry, but not at investing. So they have no money.
Have 4.1 million coming to you one day.
I'm on paper. I'm rich. I could bankroll your platform, your podcast, brother.
Geez, now I feel bad that you didn't spend the cab fare to come across town to do this in person.
I don't have the money. If I had the money, you know.
Well, so you're worth 4.1.
You get a thick skin when Nazis want to kill you. You get a thicker skin when you have people who on the right, who for years told me, go back to where you come from. I'm like, it's New Jersey, but okay, I have to go back. I like New York City, but I'm from Jersey. And all the hate I've gotten. So I got to tell you, I mean, this is the truth. And I've tweeted this. Every time I trigger a Trump supporter, an angel gets their wings, because it actually brings me joy. When I trigger them, it's because I've said something that angers them because it resonates. I can spew a lot of garbage and they won't say anything, but I'm not targeting the rank and file Republicans. I'm talking about the leadership that is profiting off of hate. And I mean, politically profiting and sometimes financially, to be honest. It's like the dealers or the users. I'm going after the dealers, folks. The users are being sucked in for various reasons.
So as a comedian and a dream chaser, as we wind this down,
right,
what keeps you going? I guess that's the right way to say it. Again, I don't know where the politics are of the people who listen to this show.
Right.
What keeps Dean going? What keeps Dean adapting? And what keeps Dean creative?
At different times in my life, there were different things. When I was a full-time comedian, and that was all I did for years, for like probably 10 years traveling the country, it was writing new jokes, maybe getting on TV. I was on The View when Tom was there. I was on The View twice and Tom was doing the warm-up. And I was on Good Morning America and I saw Tom do. So that was a thing.
There's that day, yeah.
Right. So that's really made me think, oh, we're doing the Arab Comedy Festival and it would sell out and get press and you feel good about it. As I've gotten older and focused more on politics, it's delusionally about feeling like you're making a difference, like you're having an impact on issues you care about, that you're fighting the good fight and you're hoping that you're going to make a difference if it's an election in 2020 or 2018, that you're fighting against bigotry and hate. And a lot of it, again, is fueled by my late father. He came here because to him, America represented someplace special. He could have picked any country. He could have went to Canada. He picked the United States. And I've personally insulted when these people, some on the right, the more extreme ones, really are embracing white nationalism. And there'd be no place for my father in this country. And there'd be no place for me and for Italians who were demonized when my grandparents from Sicily came here in the late 1800s. They were demonized the same way Muslims are for being Catholic and for being olive skin. So I have two lineages of my life of people who've been demonized. And so now it's about fighting the good fight to try to make a difference. I hope in a good way, to try to make America the embracing place, the melting pot, the idea. I've always written articles about e pluribus unum, which is the Latin phrase on our seal, from many one. And the idea that we can all come from different places and still be Americans. And I personally am insulted by those on the right who don't believe that. So the fight now, what motivates me is trying to make a difference. And I know I'm delusional because you can't quantify that. You can't measure that. But if I write articles, they get a lot of shares because it's an issue that I care about. I feel good about that. If I do a monologue on my show and I release it on Twitter, it's not ego. It literally is, I'm hoping people are watching it. I'm hoping people are moved by it and it makes them see the issue a different way, or at least know there are people out there who feel like they do. Because sometimes you're in a vacuum. You're surrounded by people who all disagree with you politically. You're like, wow, I might be the outlier. And you get gaslit unintentionally by people. So to me, it's really now it's about trying to make a difference in making the country what I hope it can be and what it should be.
All right. Now, what are we pushing? I got a loyal fan base that wants to be friends with you, Dean.
Oh, well,
what
great. Well, I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah. I open my radio show every day by saying I want to be your MBFF, your Muslim best friend forever. So if you don't have a Muslim friend, I'm there for you. Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. If you have Sirius XM, I'm on 6 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, channel 127. It's called Progress Channel. Or just email me, dean@deanofradio.com, DEAN@deanofradio.com. I do a weekly newsletter on Sunday. It's free. I don't ask for money. I'm never asking for money. It's just a free newsletter.
Oh, wow.
Drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com, and you're on the list. And it's growing. And it's some my articles, it's some clips from my show, some funny things here and there. But it's every Sunday I send it out, and some people like it. So
you do it once. Actually, that's a great one. You do it once a week, huh?
Every Sunday it comes out. I send it out every Sunday afternoon, and it's like the size of like an article and a half. But I embed clips from my radio show, especially the video clips, and I embed it in the newsletter, and I embed some of my articles. I talk about who's coming up on my show the next week, and also just my thoughts on some of the political issues of the week. And I hope people engage with it. And so I've been doing that now for about almost a year. Pete Dominic suggested I do it. I've been doing that ever since.
He's another one we got to get on this thing. Dean, you're a treat and an old friend, and thank you. So you guys, you heard the list. You heard the things Dean's pushing. Go check him out. This should air on Tuesday, so we'll be back tomorrow. Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays here at the Tom Kelly Show. Good night, New York.